All right, ever get that feeling? Like you're stuck with something?
Stuck.
Yeah, like you're in too deep to quit, even when it's not going so well. That book you can't put down, even though it's awful. Or, I don't know, maybe you finish a meal you don't even like.
Ah, because you paid for it. I see, I see.
Exactly. It's like something's telling us to keep going, even when logically we shouldn't.
And that's something. That's what we're diving into today.
This is the deep dive, and today we're tackling a fascinating quirk of human behavior. It goes against all those, those classic economic theories about rational decision-making.
Right, because in theory, our decisions should be all about future gains, not past expenditures. But
But we humans, we're not always so rational, are we?
not always. We get tripped up by what's already happened, what we've already put in. And that's where sunk costs come in.
Sunk costs. Okay, break that down for us.
Basically, any past cost that's gone, unrecoverable. Money spent, time invested, effort poured in, it's sunk.
Like spilled milk. Can't unspill it.
Perfect analogy. And in economics, there's this thing called the bygones principle. It says, these past costs, they should have zero impact on our current decisions.
Meaning?
Let me give you an example. Say a company is building a factory. Millions poured in, but then projections change. The project won't be as profitable as they thought. What should they do?
Well, logically, they should cut their losses.
Right.
So, move on.
Exactly. The focus should be on whether the future returns justify continuing, not on what's already been sunk into the project, but, well, human behavior. It often throws logic out the window.
So how does this bygones thing apply to, like, everyday decisions, where we get stuck?
That's where we fall into the sunk cost fallacy, this tendency to just keep going with something because we've already invested so much time, money, emotion, even if it's no longer, well, serving us.
It's like we're trying to convince ourselves just a little more, it'll all turn around.
That's it. And it shows up everywhere. Relationships, business decisions, even, international conflicts.
Give us an example, something concrete.
The Concorde, that supersonic jet. The British and French governments kept funding it even when it was clear it was economically a disaster. All about recouping those sunk costs, not making a rational decision based on the future.
Wow, that's something else. It seems almost impossible to just ignore those past investments.
It's tough because it's not just logic at play, it's psychology, it's how our brains work.
Okay, so what's happening in our minds when we fall for this sunk cost trap?
One key factor is something called framing effects. How information is presented changes how we see risk and gain. For instance, studies show people are more likely to choose a medical treatment if it's framed as having a 90% survival rate than a 10% mortality rate.
It's the same outcome, right? Just presented differently, I guess, when you're already feeling invested.
Exactly. You might frame staying the course as avoiding a loss, even if cutting your losses is the more rational choice.
Okay, so the way we mentally package the situation matters. What else contributes to this mental tug of war?
Well, there's the over-optimistic probability bias.
That's a mouthful.
It's our tendency to overestimate the chances of success after we've made an investment.
Like you're at the racetrack, keep betting on a losing horse, convinced it's going to turn things around.
Exactly. There's this study on horse racing, fascinating stuff. Bettors, they actually rated their horses' chances higher after placing their bets than before. The investment literally shifted their perception.
Interesting. So framing and over-optimism, got it. But I'm sure there's more to it, right? What other psychological hooks are keeping us in this sunk cost quicksand?
There's the sense of personal responsibility. We're way more likely to get caught up in the sunk cost fallacy when we feel personally responsible for that initial investment.
So if I pick the restaurant and the food's awful, I'm more likely to force myself to eat it than if someone else chose the place.
Perfect example. It's about protecting our egos, not wanting to admit a mistake. There was this study with business students. Those who felt more responsible for an initial investment, they were more likely to keep pouring resources into a failing department. Those who inherited the project, not so much.
It's like we're trying to prove we made the right call in the first place. So we've got framing, over-optimism, and personal responsibility. What's the last piece of this sunk cost puzzle?
This one's a biggie. Our aversion to waste. We hate feeling like we've wasted time, money, energy, you name it. So we cling to things even when they're not working, just to avoid that feeling of loss.
It's like telling yourself, well, I've come this far, but continuing just makes the waste worse, right?
Exactly. That's the trick of the sunk cost fallacy. It leads us to decisions that hurt us more in the long run.
This has me thinking about so many past decisions. Is there anything we can do about this sunk cost trap?
Absolutely. Awareness is key. Knowing about it, understanding the psychology, that's your first line of defense. You'll start to spot it when it's affecting your choices.
Like a mental alarm bell. Hold on, am I justifying this bad decision based on what I've already put in? What else can we do?
Reframing the decision helps. Instead of what you've lost, focus on what you've learned. Think, okay, what will help me make better choices going forward?
Shifting from feeling like a victim to seeing it as a growth opportunity.
Precisely. Reclaiming your power. Another strategy. Think about the opportunity cost. Ask yourself, what else could I be doing if I wasn't holding on to this?
Good point. Every decision closes doors on other possibilities. Sometimes the best thing I ask to open a new door, even if it means leaving something behind.
Exactly. Make choices that match your goals, your values, not the weight of past investments. And get some outside perspective. Talk to someone you trust, someone who's not emotionally involved.
Like a friend who can tell you when you've got those rose-colored sunk cost glasses on.
Exactly. That outside view can challenge your assumptions, help you see things more clearly. And consider this, pre-committing to a decision process, one that values future gains over those past investments.
Pre-committing, how do you mean?
Set clear criteria for when to walk away from a project, a relationship, even a negotiation. Having those boundaries, it helps you detach from the emotional side and make the best choice.
It's like having an exit strategy before you even begin. That's got to take discipline.
It does, but it's about giving yourself the power to choose based on logic, not fear.
This has been so insightful. You've given us a lot to think about. As we wrap up our deep dive into sunk costs, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
Here's the thing. Sunk costs, they're part of life. We all make investments that don't work out. The trick is not letting those past choices, those investments, cloud our judgment when we're looking ahead.
So not avoiding sunk costs entirely, but learning to deal with them.
Exactly. They're gone in the past. We can glance back, learn, but they shouldn't be the ones driving.
Like checking the rearview mirror, but keeping your eyes on the road.
Perfect analogy. Acknowledge those past investments, but don't let them become chains.
This deep dive's been, well, eye-opening. The economics behind it, the psychology, and even some practical tips for, escaping this sunk cost trap. Feels like a whole new toolkit for making decisions.
Oh, that's what we like to hear. And remember, anyone can fall for this, even the most rational among us. The key is awareness, challenging those assumptions, and making choices that really match your goals, your values.
So listeners, next time you find yourself holding on to something that's just not working, a project, relationship, whatever, remember that rear view mirror. Learn from it, but don't get stuck there. Choose what's best for your future, even if it means letting go.
Well said. Letting go can be the most courageous and rewarding decision.
This has been fantastic. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, exploring those tricky but always fascinating sunk costs. Until next time, keep those mental alarm bells ringing. And remember, sometimes the best investment is in letting go.